Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a book that has totally shaken up how millions of people think about money. Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. At its heart, it's really a story about two dads and two completely different ways of looking at the world of finance. Okay, so let's get right into the central conflict. It all comes down to the author's two father figures. His own, who was highly educated but always struggled with money. His poor dad, and his best friend's father, a street-smart entrepreneur who became his rich dad. And as you can see, their beliefs about money couldn't have been more different. In these opposing views, well, these shades everything. Poor dad, a high-ranking government official, was all about job security. Rich dad, on the other hand, was all about financial freedom. This huge difference forced the young author to choose which path to follow. And now one choice, it would really define the rest of his life. Now, the first and maybe the most powerful lesson from Rich Dad didn't come from some boring lecture in the classroom. Oh no, it came from an experience. One that was designed to teach a fundamental truth about how money really works. So the story kicks off when the author is just 9 years old. He gets called a poor kid by some friends. It really stings. So he goes to his rich dad and asks, "Can you teach me how to make money?" And Rich Dad's first lesson, he gives him a job dusting canned goods in a store for a measly 10 cents an hour. So, after a few weeks of this, he was getting super frustrated and was ready to just quit. He goes to Rich Dad to complain, and that's when the real lesson actually started. Rich Dad told him that life pushes everyone around. You can either let it happen or you can wake up and learn from each one of those pushes. He laid it out like this. He said that most people's financial lives are driven by two really powerful emotions. The fear of not having enough money, and the desire for all the cool stuff money can buy. And to prove his point, he put the author to the test with a few tempting offers. First, he offered him $1 an hour. Now you gotta remember, this was in 1856. For a 9-year-old kid making 10 cents an hour, $1 was like winning the lottery. He was the first big test you desire. Then, when he saw the boy hesitate a bit, he cranked it up even more. $5 an hour. I mean, that was just an insane, life-changing amount of money for a kid back then. The author said he could literally feel his heart pounding. But here's the amazing part. He actually resisted. And that's when Rich Dad delivered the final knockout punch. He said, "Okay. From now on, I'm gonna pay you nothing." The whole point was to completely break the cycle, right? To force him to stop thinking about working for a paycheck and searching all the opportunities to make money that were sitting right in front of him. And what happened next just shows you it worked. Because their minds weren't stuck on earning a wage anymore, they spotted an opportunity everyone else was missing. They created this little business that made money for them, even when they weren't physically there. And for the very first time, they actually understood what it meant to have their money work for them. So this whole first lesson, this whole experience, was really about helping them avoid a lifelong trap, something Rich Dad called the rat race. This is the trap he saw most people fall into. Their lives are run by those same two emotions, fear and desire. And getting a raise or finding a better job, it doesn't actually solve the problem. It just makes the little hamster wheel spin faster, which usually just leads to more spending and more debt. Rich Dad's metaphor for this was, honestly, perfect. He said it's like you're a donkey chasing a carrot that's dangling on a stick just in front of your face. You're working like crazy. But that promise of a bigger paycheck, the carrot, keeps you chasing something you can never actually catch. You never really get ahead. So what's the escape hatch? How do you get out of this trap? Well, it all comes down to understanding one really simple but incredibly powerful rule. This is it, seriously. If you only take one thing away from this whole explainer, this should be it. This is the number one rule in the whole book, and it's the foundation of what Kiyosaki calls financial literacy. Forget all the complicated definitions you learned in accounting class. Rich Dad's version was super simple, and he only focused on one thing: cash flow. He said an asset is anything that puts money in your pocket. Period. And a liability, well, it's just the exact opposite. It takes money out of your pocket. The key thing here is that it's not about what something is called or what the banker tells you. It's all about which direction the cash is flowing. That's the whole game. This show really visualizes the whole story. You see, the poor and the middle class, they focus on their income. A paycheck comes in, and boom, it flows way back out to pay for expenses and liabilities. But the rich, they focus on their balance sheet. They use their income to buy assets, and then it's those assets that generate their income. It's a totally different pattern. Okay, so this brings us to what is probably the most controversial idea in the entire book. If you follow this simple logic, then your own home, the one you live in, is not an answer. It's all liability. And why is that? Because every single month it takes money out of your pocket for the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, the repairs. You get the idea. So once you really understand that difference, it leads your way to the final and most actionable lesson for building your own wealth. To explain this lesson, Rich Dad would bring up this famous quote from Ray Kroc, the guy who founded McDonald's. He was making this really important distinction between your profession, which is what you do for a paycheck, and your business, which is your asset column. See, a banker's profession is banking, but their business should be the assets they're buying. So the big takeaway here is this. Keep your day job. You'll need that to pay the bills, but you'll need to use your spare time and whatever extra income you have to mind your own business. And your business is that asset column. It's about focusing on buying real assets that generate income, not just working harder so you can afford more liabilities. And that really just leaves us with one last question to think about. When you look at your own finances, are you just focused on your profession, or are you truly minding your own business by building an asset column that will one day work for you?